I think we'll get started. You're very welcome and thank you for your participation to today's meeting. The agenda was transmitted to you electronically, so if there are no comments, can we consider the agenda approved? Okay. Item number 2, the minutes of the last meeting attached to the dossier will be approved tomorrow at 10 a.m, either in its current wording or with any changes requested before that deadline to the Secretariat. And then item number 3 is just to note that this meeting will end at 16:30. English, French, Italian and Spanish simultaneous interpretation will be provided. And as I don't have any other announcements, we can move to the main points on our agenda. So item number 4 is the debriefing on the mission to Palestine of the 27th and the 29th of October 2025. As you know, the DPAL mission to Palestine in October took place without my participation as chair, as just 3 days before departure I was informed by Israeli authorities that I would be blocked from entering Palestine, along with a 5-year travel ban imposed on me. As chair, I then faced the very difficult choice as to whether or not to cancel the mission entirely, as we had to do in February, or to allow it to proceed in my absence. And I felt that given the critical importance of maintaining engagement with Palestinians in the West Bank, I felt that it was important that we prioritised the delegation's work over my personal exclusion. I reiterate the delegation's unwavering political will and commitment to denounce human rights violations and breaches of international law in the occupied Palestinian territories, including through our physical presence on the ground. The EU and its institutions must continue to actively challenge such restrictions while supporting the Palestinian people's right to dignity, self-determination and international protection. I would like to now hand over to my 2 colleagues, Ms Strada and Ms Joveva, the only 2 DPAL members who finally participated in the mission. So I'll give the floor to you, Ms Strada.
Thank you very much, Chair. I will speak in Italian, if you allow. Sì, io e Irene abbiamo deciso di partecipare a questa missione nonostante il travel ban della nostra chair è una decisione che sarà presa ovviamente in accordo con la chair per evitare di disperdere ancora una volta purtroppo tutti gli sforzi messi nell'organizzazione della missione, ma voglio sottolineare che condanniamo nel modo più forte il fatto che la nostra chair abbia ricevuto un travel ban di 5 anni e mi sentirei di condannare in modo altrettanto forte le istituzioni europee che non stand up per noi in questa circostanza, che non si oppongono a queste chiare violazioni, tentativi di impedirci di fare il nostro lavoro, e veramente desidererei che le istituzioni europee fossero dalla nostra parte, dalla parte dei parlamentari, perché questi attacchi non sono contro singoli parlamentari, sono contro le intere istituzioni e questo Parlamento. La missione si è svolta in modo piuttosto fluido, abbiamo avuto diversi incontri, cercherò di essere molto breve. Negli incontri istituzionali con l'autorità palestinese i temi principali che sono stati affrontati sono il percorso di riforme e il tema delle risorse dell'autorità palestinese. Sul percorso delle riforme ci hanno assicurato che stanno procedendo, però hanno anche voluto sottolineare che non credono che un lungo elenco di riforme possa essere un prerequisito per la loro libertà e dignità. Pensano che la libertà e la dignità siano dei valori che dovrebbero essere garantiti a prescindere a che punto siamo nel percorso delle riforme. Il tema delle risorse dell'autorità palestinese trattenute illecitamente da Israele è un tema veramente critico, perché di fatto sta rendendo impossibile all'autorità palestinese di fornire servizi essenziali alla popolazione, e continuerà a peggiorare la cosa, che da un lato delegittima evidentemente l'autorità palestinese come responsabile del proprio territorio, e dall'altra rischia di creare dall'altro esacerba ulteriormente la situazione già complicatissima in Cisgiordania, e quindi questo tema dell'accessibilità dalla parte dell'autorità palestinese alle proprie risorse è un tema che dobbiamo affrontare con grande urgenza come Europa. con le agenzie internazionali, le agenzie dell'ONU e ECO abbiamo affrontato la situazione a Gaza, che continua a essere una situazione di catastrofe umanitaria. Purtroppo si sono spenti i riflettori sulla situazione, dobbiamo riaccenderli. Catastrofe umanitaria che si manifesta in ancora 1000 ostacoli all'ingresso degli aiuti. Citerò soltanto il tema dei prodotti, degli items dual use che vengono bloccati da Israele, ma la maggior parte di questi item dual use sono assolutamente necessari alla ricostruzione, per esempio, delle strutture sanitarie. Il WFP il World Food Program ha voluto sottolineare il tema della diversità del cibo e ci ha chiesto per favore smettere di ragionare in termini di quanti camion entrano, cominciamo a ragionare in termini anche di quante calorie, quale tipo di dieta per i bambini, eccetera. I rappresentanti dell'Organizzazione Mondiale della Sanità ci hanno fatto presente i numeri spaventosi non solo delle vittime, ma delle 42.000 persone che hanno subito ferite che cambiano la vita, mutilazioni o ferite che richiederanno un'assistenza lungo tutto l'arco della loro vita, assistenza che difficilmente potranno ricevere all'interno del paese, e un quarto di queste persone sono bambini. Abbiamo incontrato la società civile, molti rappresentanti di diverse organizzazioni della società civile palestinese e israeliana. Da parte palestinese ci hanno espresso una grande voglia di elezioni, una grande stanchezza con l'attuale leadership e la voglia di evolvere il paese, riformare il paese. Da parte della società civile israeliana ci hanno espresso le preoccupazioni enormi per questo spazio civico che sta sempre più restringendo, con leggi della Knesset volte a silenziare l'organizzazione della società civile israeliana e a bloccare le organizzazioni internazionali che lavorano in Palestina. Abbiamo incontrato evidentemente UNRWA, il cui abbiamo ribadito il ruolo essenziale dell'UNRWA, che non può essere sostituito da niente e da nessuno se non da un futuro Stato palestinese in grado di prendersi cura di tutti i bisogni delle proprie cittadine e cittadini, ma non siamo ancora a quel punto. Abbiamo visitato una scuola e abbiamo chiesto alle bambine della scuola femminile cosa volete fare da grande, ed erano tutte: voglio fare il dottore, voglio essere ingegnere, voglio essere avvocata, tante vogliono fare l'avvocata, e una di queste ha anche alzato la mano per dire: posso dire perché voglio fare l'avvocata? Perché da quando mio fratello è stato arrestato dall'esercito israeliano non abbiamo più avuto notizie di lui e quindi voglio diventare avvocata per poterlo liberare. Riguardo la situazione in Cisgiordania, abbiamo espresso a tutti gli interlocutori la nostra preoccupazione per il voto preliminare della Knesset sull'annessione della Cisgiordania. La maggior parte degli interlocutori ha accolto la nostra preoccupazione con un sorriso, dicendo: ma non hanno bisogno di votare, l'annessione è già in corso, ed è così, è in corso tutti i giorni. Sappiamo che dal 7 di ottobre sono aumentati, sarà un'accelerata importantissima al numero di insediamenti e di avamposti che sono illegali anche secondo la stessa legge israeliana e che si stanno moltiplicando. Abbiamo visitato, in una delle due visite sul campo, abbiamo visitato la comunità beduina di Michmas, dove abbiamo potuto vedere esattamente qual è il sistema per annettere il territorio, che comincia con gli avamposti, con le violenze, con l'uccisione del bestiame, con togliere la terra da pascolo alla comunità, eccetera, eccetera, fino a che le comunità non se ne vanno e a quel punto la terra può essere annessa. Questa stagione di raccolta delle olive è la stagione più violenta da quando UNRWA tiene i conti delle violenze dei coloni, e forse mi autocorreggo perché forse è sbagliato parlare delle violenze dei coloni. Le violenze dei singoli coloni sono possibili solo in un sistema di impunità per i coloni, perché i coloni di fatto sono lo strumento dell'annessione quotidiana della Cisgiordania. Velocissima, Gerusalemme Est, abbiamo visitato il quartiere di Silwan, dove uno dei meccanismi, dove le persone vengono cacciate dalle loro case, i palestinesi, in base a una legge del 1970, e questo è uno degli strumenti per la pulizia etnica di fatto anche a Gerusalemme Est. Ci hanno fatto vedere i conti un signore ci ha mostrato il conto del bulldozer che gli ha demolito la casa e ci ha fatto notare: guarda, mi hanno fatturato anche, nel conto mi fanno pagare anche i 9 panini che la polizia ha mangiato mentre mi stavano demolendo la casa. Preoccupante, questo ce l'ha sottolineato un'organizzazione israeliana, preoccupante a Gerusalemme anche l'uso che si sta facendo dell'archeologia per riscrivere la storia, per cui una delle più grandi e potenti organizzazioni di coloni sta di fatto utilizzando il centro visitatori e la stessa archeologia di Gerusalemme per riscrivere la storia senza i palestinesi. Chiudo dicendo che la parola chiave, io credo, di questa missione è accountability. Tutti quanti ci hanno chiesto accountability, per 2 motivi almeno. Uno, serve giustizia perché bisogna proteggere le future vittime. Se noi non garantiamo la giustizia per quello che è accountability, per i crimini che sono stati commessi dal 7 ottobre a oggi da parte di Israele a Gaza e in Cisgiordania, evidentemente non c'è alcun disincentivo a smettere e quindi non riusciamo a proteggere le prossime vittime, ma anche perché dare giustizia alle vittime per quello che è successo, ci hanno fatto notare, è l'unico modo per cui si possa coltivare la speranza, è l'unico modo per cui si eviti che le persone vadano a cercare di farsi giustizia da soli, che non sarebbe giustizia ma sarebbe un'altra spirale di odio e di violenza. Con ciò ho parlato fin troppo e passo la parola alla mia collega Ire. Ah no, sì, volevo ringraziare tutti. Grazie davvero al segretariato, a tutti i policy advisor e tutti quelli che hanno reso questa breve ma molto densa missione possibile.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Cecilia. Actually, she explained everything and the point of everything. I mean, the mission as such didn't start calmly or without any problems. You already said why, but at the end, with the derogation of the rules also, I have to maybe also mention that because it was important that only the 2 of us could go at the end, because the President of the European Parliament did that. So it was, you know, I'm sorry that it was only the 2 of us, but it was a really important, I think, mission, especially at the time being. But I do hope that next time it will be a little bit different. But okay, we are not there yet. Overall, during the mission, we didn't have any like major problems, except for the first day when we were denied going through one checkpoint when we were coming back from Ramallah to Jerusalem. But, you know, maybe it was just like they wanted to show we are still here, we are still watching you. So it's not like everything is fine with you being here, but it was all sorted out. We waited for an hour or so, an hour and a half. Other than that, we had no like bigger issues, not even at the airport, not even in between. I will not repeat everything that was said, but maybe just the way I saw all the meetings and all the field visits that we did. I mean, one thing was very clear, that the situation is nothing but normal, you know, and the peace agreement, the so-called whatever, is not that, you know. It was very, very, very clear. And even if it appeared calm, for example, in Ramallah or also in East Jerusalem, it actually, you know, it's just maybe the way you see it if you don't speak with people or, you know, don't want to look actually what's happening there still. The message that we received was consistent, you know. Behind every temporary agreement or fragile ceasefire, there's a reality of the really big humanitarian crisis, expanding settlements, you know, worsening violence, deeper structural inequality, which is getting worse and worse. And Gaza remains devastated, but the West Bank is actually now the center of the often invisible violence. I think the focus is not there as it should be regarding West Bank as such. And what struck me the most was actually the overwhelming sense that the international law is being selectively applied. because they always asked us just a simple question like, what's the point of the rules that we have or you have as an European Union if the violations carry no consequences? So yes, the accountability definitely was the #1 word and actually the #1 thing that we have to do now. I'm speaking on the European level because financial aid cannot replace and should not replace political responsibility as such. So the most emotional part for me actually was the already mentioned school, because it was really, you know, it was tough looking at those children. They were happy, they were smiling and speaking about their future and what they want to be when they grow up. So it was really, that really struck me the most. And yeah, the core issue, as I said today, is not only Gaza, because the decisive battleground, if I may use those words, for the coming years, it really is the West Bank. And, you know, people stay there not because they feel safe, but because the identity and the land is the only thing that they have. And land is even not there anymore. So the identity as such is probably really the only thing that they don't want to be taken from them. So it's really worsening, and it's not just a Palestinian issue. It's, you know, the issue of the Europeans' credibility. And we have tools, we have leverage. We used that or are still using that in some other conflict areas, but, you know, here we really act selectively, and it's not a matter of capacity, but of consistency and moral integrity, the way I see it. So the most important thing right now, really, I think, is the seek of the responsibility, because a lot of inexplicable things happen in the last 2 years, and we should not behave like it didn't. Also, the media coverage is really like changing a lot, and it's not, I think, it's not okay, and the ones responsible must be held responsible. I mean, that's also the key message that we got from them, and they are right. So, yeah, let's think about what we can do to push for more. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to both of you, and I really appreciate you travelling under the circumstances, and also to thank the Secretariat, and as you said, the amount of work that goes into these trips. It was important that that work didn't go to waste and that you got to see with your own eyes. I will open it up to colleagues if they want to ask questions or have comments just on the mission, but just to advise you that we do need to move to the next point on the agenda, so if people can keep their comments to 1 or 2 minutes, I'd really appreciate it. So, yeah. Anna Miranda.
Yes, thank you for the information. You are lucky that you can go, because some of us, we cannot go. And the question is how you manage, President, the question of your ban, because now it's time also to change that, and also my ban that was finished in June for 10 years. So I think we need to manage that. There are a lot of members that we are forbidden to go. More that both, maybe 10 members, that is not normal. If they apply that, we need to apply it also with the Israeli that come to the parliament. But I think it's time to go to do something.
Okay, I think I will be, I mean, it probably is a conversation for an in-camera discussion, but just that I will be in touch with members of the delegation just about some ideas I have about how we can be most effective as a delegation, given that, as you said, Anna, there's now, I think, at least 3 of us who can't travel on the delegation. Who knows if, you know, following the fact that Strada and Ms. Joveva have been there, will probably be prevented going back. So I think it's a deliberate strategy to try and frustrate the work. So we will come with some ideas for people, just and I'd appreciate if people could come to that meeting, but I think best to have it in camera. Thank you. Okay. So I now move to point number 5 on the agenda, and that's the exchange of views with Francesca Albanese, the Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the Palestinian territory occupied since 1967. So we're delighted to have Francesca Albanese joining us remotely to outline the situation, and I really do thank her for her availability. And before I give the floor to Ms Albanese, I'd just like to make a couple of comments. And that is really just to say that Palestine remains at a critical focal point of political and humanitarian concern, and it is essential that we assess developments with clarity and objectivity. In Gaza, there are ongoing Israeli military operations with continued death and destruction and severe restrictions on aid, electricity and medical supplies. In the West Bank, as you've heard from colleagues, conditions have further deteriorated. Israeli illegal settler violence against Palestinian communities and the forcible transfer of civilians has escalated, which has exacerbated the tensions. Meanwhile, the Palestinian Authority continues to face governance challenges compounded by Israel's decision to withhold tax revenues, a financial crisis that urgently demands resolution. So I would now like to give the floor to Francesca Albanese, United Nations Special Rapporteur in the occupied Palestinian territories. Ms Albanese's work has been crucial. She has been a leading light for international law and the upholding of human rights, and her reports, I think, have illuminated the conditions for Palestinians on the ground and have demonstrated the obligations of third countries under international law. So I am delighted to welcome Ms Albanese to DPAL today, and I now ask her to make her contribution.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
Yeah, I'm happy to be among you, distinguished members of the European Parliament. I would just like to seek a clarification before I start. How many minutes would you like me to give initial remarks for?
If you like, you can 15 minutes, if that's okay, and that will give us time for questions.
Oh, yeah, it's plenty. No, so I thought it was shorter than that. Okay, sounds great. Listen to the briefing that was just offered to you, and I can just nod and concur. The situation that has been presented is despicable. The fact of not being able, as a special rapporteur, to visit the occupied Palestinian territory does not prevent me from accessing information because of direct channels to various people and organizations in the region. And there is still a level of documentation that of the ongoing violations by Palestinians themselves and Palestinian and Israeli human rights organizations that allow us to almost touch by hand the difficulties that the Palestinians are enduring in the West Bank. It is incredible that despite the many alerts and red flags and advancement of the annexation plan, which is tantamount to an aggression under international law, no one challenges what Israel is doing in the West Bank, which is an ethnic cleansing at a different speed than what is happening in the Gaza Strip. I do believe that it's about time that we realize that the Palestinians are on a very sensitive point of a trajectory that has been decided long time ago for them. 20, 30 years ago, Benjamin Netanyahu was already expressing himself as fully against the creation of a Palestinian state, and he has been able, with him accomplices, to advance and to prepare the plan that allows for the final stage of the destruction of the Palestinian people. And this is what's going to happen to the Palestinians under Israeli rule is clear. Look at what's happening in Gaza, where the full destruction of the Gaza Strip has now led to the devastation of the survivors, on top of the estimated 200,000 between killed or estimated killed and those who have been seriously injured and will carry long life scars, for physical scars, for what they have endured. As we speak, winter has come, and 1.9 million Palestinians have been made homeless. Those who remain do not have a safe and dignified home where to seek repair, let alone access to water, access to the dignified existence. Every day now we see the survivors, those who are not bombed by Israel, trying to empty their tents of the water that has come in, either by the sea, because this is the place that Palestinians have been left to live, an area which is quite unsafe, and where can they only camp in between the sea and the full destruction of the various areas, Derbala, Khan Yunis, or Gaza City, El Mawasi. The ceasefire is just an empty word, because in a little over than a month since the ceasefire, Israel has killed nearly 300 people. 100 in one day only, 1 week ago. 50 children killed in one day during the so-called ceasefire. And I do not expect the last resolution passed by the Security Council to improve the situation. And as I was commenting on during my visit in Brussels, I'm really at a loss for words, because like many international law experts agree, and not many in the United Nations have the courage to say, this Security Council resolution runs against international law as established by the UN Charter, the principle of equality of member states, and the principle of self-defense, the right of self-determination that predates the UN Charter for the Palestinian people, and it has been violated through and through. And it is agreed that there is international consensus that has dominated for the past 35 years, that the Palestinians must have their own state as the realization of self-determination as a people, and Israel is destroying it bit by bit, and now with the support of the Security Council, which puts a security first, a capitalist-driven security first, in fact, model above the rights of the Palestinian people. They won't have agency, they won't have direct control over the Gaza Strip. There will be an administration controlled directly by the US administration, and therefore nothing is getting out of the hands of the unlawful occupier, which is Israel. And what is shocking, there are two elements which are utterly shocking. The first is that the reconstruction plan not only is wrong as it's planned, because it's planned without the Palestinians, and while the bombing and the shooting and the starving are still ongoing, but also because Gaza is a crime scene. It's been theater to war crimes, crimes against humanity, a genocide, and this is where mass graves have to be identified, discovered, dignified burial is to be given. There are the civil records of the Palestinians that need to be found as much as possible. It's not up to a foreign administration whose members have been committing or have been accomplices in international crimes to determine the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip. So yes, Gaza is to be rebuilt, but when and how Palestinians decide, and the only thing that the United States and Israel have to do first in line is to make sure that they fill the envelope for the reconstruction without decision-making attached to it. And this is the second part that is really shocking of this resolution beyond this content. It's the support it has enjoyed by member states. But again, here we are. This is what multilateralism has turned into, despite the noble efforts of a number of member states, mostly from the global south. The rest have been bending backward and forward to comply with the diktat of the United States, including European countries and European Union. The European Union has failed to act as a regional organization capable of enforcing even the most basic political measures to stop the crimes that Israel has been committing. And in fact, what I argue in my report, in my last report to the General Assembly, is that member states, including most European states, have contributed to create the conditions for Israel to maintain an unlawful occupation, an apartheid regime, and now a genocide. So, and this has happened through states providing diplomatic and political support, military support, and economic support. Bear in mind that when I say support, it doesn't mean aid, it means also political cover, but it also means mutual profiting, and I'll get to it when I cover the last point. So I found in my report that the European Union and its officials have continued to operate with Israel according to the long-tested model of business as usual, reiterating unwavering support for Israel's right to defend itself, even when it was absolutely adamant that Israel was committing crimes, international crimes, at least war crimes, targeting civilians, using indiscriminatory violence, failing to take precautions, and failing the proportionality test in its response, whatever it was, against Hamas. From an economic, and also what I should notice here is also the fact that the narrative and the political discourse that has been accompanying these political choices, never preventing Israel from joining international fora, has been to relaunch and to revamp colonial tropes against the Palestinians, buying into the logic of a civilized people fighting an existential struggle against a people of savage. The second element is the economic support. The European Union has proudly remained Israel's largest trading partner, accounting for 1/3 of the total trade flows, including over the past 2 years. Regrettably, the EU-Israel Association Agreement continues to operate unchallenged, with the institution failing once again to terminate it when the opportunity arose in last July. I also found extremely serious the fact that the Horizon program alone has financed and continues to finance in Israeli entities, including military institutions like the Israeli aerospace industries, Rafael Advanced Defense System, or Elbit System, and the Israeli Ministry of Defense itself, which have been part and parcel not only of the crimes that have been committed against the Palestinians, not only of the testing of weapons and technologies on the Palestinians, but also of the genocide that has been committed over the past 2 years. And also the EU financial backing has been significant because I estimated that also relying on public sources, that since 1988, the European Investment Bank has financed Israeli entities, including the one I mentioned above, for a total of nearly 3 billion euros, including directly funding banks which are listed in the database of companies involved in settlement-related activities, like Bank Leumi. But also, the European Union has maintained, or European countries, members of the European Union, have continued to supply Israel with gas and fuel, with major corporations having their headquarters in the European Union being instrumental to the arming, financing, and profiting from Israel's atrocities. Last but not least, there is the military sector, which remains a central pillar of the EU-Israel cooperation. And during the genocide, arms exports and imports from EU member states to Israel have increased. The European Union has supported Israel's military apparatus, investing in technologies that were tested, as I said, over the Palestinians, and these have been used to fortify its own Fortress Europe, with Frontex deploying the very same drones that are produced by Israeli companies once tested on the Palestinians. And these are the same used in the Mediterranean Sea. So, again, this is where I say it's interesting the role that Europe is playing today, because it very much, and I say that with much regret, not only Europe is demonstrating its to be willing to ignore human rights violations in order to protect the tools for its own violations, but in doing so, it's really showing an anachronistic colonial posture that is also evident in the alliances today it maintains with partners that are making us more and more insecure at the expense of a new multilateralism that could have happened with the global South, especially in the face of what has happened in the Gaza Strip. I want to conclude that it would have just sufficed to the European Union to follow what the International Court of Justice has determined in July 2024. First of all, European member states and European Union have not complied with the ICJ provisional measures that recognize the plausibility of a genocide and therefore triggered the responsibility to protect. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that European institutions have refused to take care to acknowledge a genocide. This is something that should be considered wherever there were a process, a trial against them or against the European leaders, because denial of genocide is part of the genocide itself. But even equally serious is the fact that the European Union has skillfully, masterfully circumnavigated the obligations posed and reminded by the International Court of Justice which recognized the legality of the occupation last July 2024, saying that the occupation is unlawful, is illegal, and it must be dismantled totally and unconditionally, because it has helped annex territory, further displaced, annexed occupied territory, further displaced occupied population, and impose a regime that violates the provisions against racial segregation and apartheid. Therefore, what is to be done, and what should the European Union and its members, what should have they done? Simply make sure that Israel withdraws the troops, dismantle the colonies, and stop exploiting Palestinian resources. And instead, Israel keeps on building colonies after colonies as we speak. Not only that, keeps on aggressing through its soldiers and settlers Palestinians as we speak. So I think that this is the most, really the most shameful moment, and a moment of moral test for the European Union, whose hurt the value-driven Europe we once dreamed of and we thought to have partly realized over the year seems to be dead. It's still, and again, I do still believe that part of that heart, the dreaming heart of that Europe, is still beating despite or beneath the pain, and it's real. It's visible in the effort of its citizens across the continent, despite the fierce repression that has been unleashed against them. Take the example of Germany, of Italy, or France and other European countries. So Palestine represents a test today, not just for the Palestinians, not just for the United Nations, not just for international law and multilateralism, but also for the European Union, because especially for the young generation, which is very disappointed, according to the polls, about how politicians are handling political affairs. For them, this genocide is not something that they will read on history books, is history in the making, and they deserve better from the European Union. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms Albanese. I think you probably answered a lot of the questions that were going to come up just in your comprehensive opening statement, but I will open it up to colleagues if they wish to ask any questions, and maybe to keep their remarks to maybe 2 minutes max, if that's okay. So if there's anybody who'd like to take the floor. Tinika, Ms Strick.
Thank you so much, Francesca, for your overview. And indeed, it's very impressive, and sometimes we really feel paralyzed on what can we do more. We try to do everything, but we lack the majority here. But of course, we don't have the luxury to stay paralyzed. And I wonder, it's so striking, the current EU reaction to the 28-point plan regarding Ukraine, where the EU very clearly said there's no plan without the Ukrainians, security first, and all these kinds of things that I think, couldn't we use that also for, showing the hypocrisy, but also giving more pressure on the EU to at least judge these plans, these Trumpian plans, in the same way, and stand for the right to self-determination of the Palestinians in the way that we do for Ukraine. We talked last week briefly on the blocking statute. I don't know if you remember, but this was about the ICC, of course, and also you and others who bring evidence to the ICC, how we can make sure that the EU starts to protect the ICC and everyone working there. And there also we discussed how we could use Ukraine there, because Ukraine also has an interest in having the ICC being protected in order to bring Putin there as a war criminal. How could we combine those two more in order to force the EU to stop this double standards game? Because ever since von der Leyen in her State of the Union finally took very careful steps, we didn't hear anything afterwards anymore. So, yeah, I don't know what your ideas would be to bring this further, to use this reference framework, sort of.
Okay, and I might take just a round of questions, if that's okay, Ms Albanese. So, Ms Montero.
Thank you, President. Can I speak in Spanish? Yes? Con el micro encendido. Muchísimas gracias a la relatora. Yo quiero lo primero darle las gracias por la defensa valiente de los derechos del pueblo palestino que está haciendo. Sé que piensa que es lo que tiene que hacer, pero demasiadas veces hemos visto a quien debe hacerlo y a quien ocupa responsabilidades quedarse en una posición más cómoda, y usted no lo ha hecho. Y por eso quiero también solidarizarme por la violencia política que usted está sufriendo por cumplir con sus obligaciones como relatora especial de Naciones Unidas para los territorios ocupados palestinos. Y lo quiero decir porque es que el genocidio no solo va de arrasar Gaza y ahora arrasar el West Bank, también va de silenciar y de castigar dura y ejemplarmente a quienes están alzando la voz para frenar este genocidio. Y creo que es importante, por tanto, que no nos dejemos solas en los momentos en los que las propias instituciones, a representantes públicas, sean democráticamente electas o cumpliendo sus funciones en instituciones internacionales que velan por la legalidad internacional y los derechos humanos, como es Naciones Unidas, nos están dejando desprotegidas por la complicidad de los estados y las potencias que mandan en esas instituciones con el Estado terrorista de Israel. Entonces, lo que quería preguntarle es... algunas cosas las ha ido señalando, pero me gustaría que dijese cuáles son las herramientas que siguen teniendo los Estados miembros y las instituciones europeas para frenar el genocidio y cuáles son las obligaciones que tienen los Estados miembros y las instituciones europeas que siguen sin atender. Porque después de este plan ilegal de Trump y de la resolución de Naciones Unidas no se ha conseguido un alto el fuego real, pero lo que sí se ha conseguido es un gran pacto de silencio que ahora mismo hace que la atención mediática del mundo entero y la atención política y la conversación política ya no hable de un genocidio en marcha. Entonces, yo creo que sería, a mí por lo menos me parece relevante que nos diga cuáles son las obligaciones que los Estados de los que formamos parte siguen incumpliendo, que las instituciones europeas siguen incumpliendo, y también porque ha hecho mucha referencia a, digamos, a la parte militar y económica de la complicidad europea y estadounidense con los genocidas, pero también cómo podemos romper ese muro de silencio que se ha impuesto a través del poder mediático, que a mí me parece impresionante. Ya no hay imágenes, ya no hay noticias, ya no se habla de Palestina, incluso en las redes sociales. Claramente el algoritmo está penalizando los contenidos solidarios con Palestina para que no se hable de ello, porque si no se habla es más fácil continuar con esos crímenes y que continúen en la impunidad, que es la condición para que sigan existiendo. Así que, bueno, pues muchas gracias, y si podemos pensar sobre esto, creo que es la obligación que tenemos ahora.
And I might just ask a question myself and then hand back to you, Ms. Albanese. Just, I suppose, one on that sort of point about the duplicity between the EU's actions when it comes to Ukraine and Russia. And, you know, then it's the hypocrisy in terms of the lack of action for Israel and Palestine. I mean, just looking at the reparations issue as well and the reconstruction of Ukraine and how the EU is trying to, I suppose, find a way to make Russia pay for the devastation in Ukraine. So I'd be really interested just to hear your view around what the EU can do, particularly given how much public money has gone into Palestine to only be destroyed, and not just since October 7th, but in previous waves of destruction as well in both the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. So just your view on that and what we could do as parliamentarians to sort of raise that point that this is also public money, apart from the international law violations. This is money that's going in, and Israel can walk away with just wiping their hands. And then the other point, particularly just as well on the blocking statute and how important it is for us to pressure the EU to enforce that blocking statute and to uphold the importance of the ICC.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, I think that the double standards that the European Union has demonstrated vis-à-vis Palestine and Ukraine has never been as exposed as now. There is an hysterical reaction that is not without justification provoked by the recent developments. And finally, European countries are realizing that of what has been created at their borders and or against them. And probably they should have preserved diplomacy over war, and maybe it's too late, but it's still shocking the kind of sets of arguments that are deployed vis-à-vis Ukraine, and without any consideration of the similarities with the Palestinians, because I think this eventually manifests the dehumanization of the Palestinians is not something that concerns the Israelis or the Israeli government or the US administration alone. It's quite rooted in Europe as well. Am I surprised? Not. Shocking as it is, it's not surprising, because again, never before I've noticed the European Union maintaining a posture which is the legacy of the past century, a posture of arrogance, and a posture that allows itself to sit above the law, according to political convenience. There is one point that I would really like to make when it comes to how the European Union has spent money of its citizens in order to support the Palestinian Authority. It's clamorously evident that it has never been in the interest of creating a Palestinian state. Otherwise, why wouldn't most European states, or many European states rather, not recognize the state of Palestine? Why it takes so long to recognize the state of Palestine? Is it really because this state that is a disintegration of pieces of land without an army, with just people trying to resist, attached to what they have, and it represents an existential threat to the most powerful, mighty army in the Middle East? It's not because of that. It's because fundamentally, ideologically, many European countries and their leaders are in line or are supporting Israel's plan, are supporting Zionism as a project for the Jewish people only in the Middle East. This is problematic. Again, I'm not questioning what Israel is. I'm questioning what Israel does. However, there is an ideological posture that many European countries, or at least their governments, are taking that does not allow them to see Palestinians as equal to the Israelis or to others in need for protection. And in any case, has been supporting the Palestinian Authority really helped the Palestinians? I don't think so at all. This year, the Palestinian Authority has killed 7 people, and they were Palestinians. Have you ever seen a Palestinian police officer that the European Union has trained intervene to protect the Palestinian? No, because this is not the goal of the Palestinian Authority. The goal of the Palestinian Authority, according to the Oslo Agreement, is to ensure security coordination with Israel, the unlawful occupier of the Palestinian territory. So look at the paradox. The European Union has ended up paying for enforcing all the mechanisms of the oppression of the Palestinians. This is why I'm saying it's not just a matter of indifference, it's not just a matter of neutrality, it's a matter of supporting a system that has degraded to the point of not serving the Palestinians. Again, this is not a criticism against the Palestinian leadership per se. That doesn't, I mean, this is outside of my mandate, but the structure itself is like blocking the Palestinians in between a rock and a hard place. So no, the Palestinians should be helped free themselves from the Israeli military presence and the colonization, and then they should be allowed to determine themselves as any other people in the world, and without, as it was the dream of the decolonization movement that, I mean, shaped part of our understanding of international law in the past, since the 60s and 70s. And again, we have lost it. We have lost it completely, because today Palestinian self-determination is registered among us in Europe, many of us, as if it was a security problem for Israel, which is unacceptable. When it comes to the protecting EU citizens, yes, of course. I mean, I'm in the same situation as 2 judges of the International Criminal Court. So you have 3 European citizens who are left unprotected to the US prosecutorial measures simply for doing their job. It's appalling, but this is the European Union, not even the pride of defending their own citizens in the face of an abusive regime, because the political regime that the United States embodies today is affecting us. It's not just us, it's affecting all of us, because the banking system responds to American law, not European law. If we had been sanctioned by the state of Australia, we wouldn't be suffering the consequences and the isolation and the persecution we are suffering. But here, even on European soil, when it comes to the finance system and the banking system, we are under US law, unfortunately. Concerning, I thank the Deputy Montero for her words. of support. I have to say that political violence toward the Palestinians is what ISAF reflects of, or a symptom of. Anyone standing in solidarity with the Palestinian people in the name of justice, in the name of human rights, is accused of either anti-Semitism or supporting terrorism. And this is, of course, has the aim of silencing and shutting down the debate so that there is no accountability. What should be done? I think that European Union, and actually first of all, European law doesn't supersede international law, especially peremptory norms. Member states cannot violate international law in the name of the EU Association Agreement. If the EU Association Agreement leads to violation of international law, for example, when it comes to cutting ties with Israeli occupation, they have to observe it. They have to comply it. And by the way, there is no possibility to disentangle what Israel is from its occupation. It's Israel which occupies Palestinian land. It's Israel which accommodates 10% of its population in East Jerusalem and the West Bank. It's Israel which has established one water grid from the river to the sea by exploiting the Palestinian water basin that are in the West Bank. It's Israel which maintains an apartheid regime. It's Israel which has destroyed Gaza. It's Israel who starved the population of Gaza, killing at least 300 certain people. So what should be done? Cutting ties with Israel. First of all, stopping to transfer weapons, to including components and buying weapons and security systems from Israel. If this is not taken by the European Union, actually nothing prevents individual states from doing that, including Spain and Slovenia. They have been the most vocal countries in Europe, but have they really cut the military ties and the purchase of surveillance equipment? This is the thing. I mean, or Ireland, there are still ties with Israel. Military and economic ties must be cut. Otherwise, today, these countries, willing or not, like it or not, are complicit with a regime which is genociding the Palestinians. The other thing is that when it comes to the media, I agree with you. It's shocking what the media are doing, but it's also shocking what political leaders are doing and saying. Again, it's the remnants of an ideology that belongs to the past century. And we should really remember Hannah Arendt these days and see in the birth of what she recalls are the rise of totalitarianism, that it starts with people denying reality or stopping believing what is true, what facts are, and starting to believe lies. We are at this point today. We have the truth denied by lies, and it seems that they have the same value. If I were at the European Union or in the European Parliament, I will do everything I can to launch an independent investigation on European media. First of all, how they have covered the last 2 years in Palestine to start with, and why. Who pays them? Who's behind them? Who's at the head of the system? I can tell you the financial, the banking system, or the big tech from my last report, the ones after which I was sanctioned. I was sanctioned because I unveiled the system that is upholding the illegality of Israel's occupation and the genocide. But the same should be done at European level. There should be an investigation on who's behind who controls, which interests controls the media, being political party or financial groups. Something is there and needs to be investigated. Or maybe it's simply racism, and it should be investigated as well. And there is a last point that I wanted to make, is that there are businesses that must also be regulated. Businesses do whatever they like. Over the years, they have become actors, like international law actors. They can almost shape the law without assuming the responsibilities or corresponding obligations. And again, this is not normal. Of course, eventually the ultimate responsibility is with member states, failing which there is only one thing that might start bringing accountability, and with this I connect myself with the intervention by the Honorable Cecilia Strada. Accountability. There should be accountability of political leaders for the decisions against international law that they have taken. There should be accountability over businesses, and there should be accountability also of individuals. European individuals that have committed crimes, and this is not just businesses. There are so many double nationals from France, from Germany, from Italy, from Belgium, and probably others who have been fighting in the Israeli army. If it's proven, and in the past 2 years they have been fighting in any of the battalions or serving the Israeli army, the moment they set foot in Europe, or in their country or elsewhere, they should be considered suspects, hence investigated, and if so warrants, arrested, and if so warrants, prosecuted, and if there is enough evidence, according to the judge, they should be convicted. This is where this whole climate of impunity will end, and probably this is the only decent way we can restore a sense of legality after the monstrous 2 years we have just gone through, and not over yet.
Thank you, Ms. Albanese. If you'll indulge us, we just have a couple of other colleagues who want to come in and just ask questions for a final round. So I'll take Anna Miranda and Nicolau. So if you want to make your questions, and then I'll pass back to Ms. Albanese.
Thank you, Ms. Albanese. We want also send our solidarity and support also from Argentina, where I was last week with the Palestinian organization of civil society there, and it's a Jewish person that prepared a book with the name of your report, and he was also very happy that you will be next these days in the Parliament, and they send a lot of support from Argentina, where the thematic is also horrible because it's also very reduced by the extreme right government. And second thing is the agreement of the EU-Israel Association, especially in the imports of goods produced in the settlements. Do you agree, or do you think it's possible to denounce the European Union by the importation of goods produced in the settlements? Because I think we, as MEPs, that we have a difficult situation here denouncing the genocide, and we are not the majority of the plenary, and we battle all the time together in this plenary and in this delegation, and also with our civil societies in our countries. Maybe we can prepare a complaint against the European Union, denouncing this complicity by the importation of goods. Do you think it's a good idea or not? Because you are the most expert in the world, and we are very proud of you. And I want to say that because it's also the civil society battling in our countries all the time, and with a lot of punitions, with a lot of repression. And they want that we can do more, but we have the instruments that we have, the tools that we have, with parliamentary questions, with denouncing, with complaints, but maybe we can do a step more and denounce also the European Union by the complicity in the importation of goods and non-compliance with the EU Association Agreement. Thank you.
Yes. Let me begin by stating my name. I'm Eleftherios Nicolaou. I'm MEP of the Communist Party of Greece. I come from a country, Greece, and a state that has consistently, for the past 20 years, under all kinds of governments, social democratic, new liberal, coalition governments, upgraded its relations with Israel politically, economically, militarily, on the energetic sector. It is a staunch supporter of Israel in all forums. And we know that this is a situation that is actually pertinent to many of the countries of the European Union. Of course, we acknowledge your deep commitment in the struggle of the Palestinian people, working in international organization that it is not in the best of correlation of forces now. But at the same time, I think that there are two points of flexion between what you had said in your input and the way I am thinking of things and we are thinking of things. And this would be, the first of all, was that you were using a bit Europe and EU interchangeably. I feel that this is not the case, because EU has its content is set. EU is in an interstate union of capitalist states that serve specific interests. And in the line of the EU today, it is a war economy and a war preparation, mainly focused in the situation of the imperialist war in Ukraine, that it is a clash between capitalist Russia and Euro-Atlanticism generally. And this plan, in my view, incorporates and includes Israel. And this is actually, in our case, in the Greek case, you know, one of the biggest military industries is actually bought by Rafael Industries of Israel. So in this context, I don't think that we should be taken by surprise if international law is actually violated. But international law has been violated a lot of times in the past. So we can't say that it is something, it is a remnant of the past. It is something that is very pertinent because diplomacy has given its place to military confrontation more and more to resolve issues between the antagonism and competition between the states. So has there been change in the EU and in our countries? There has been a bit of change in how they see the Palestinian people in this struggle, because you have had some member states that recognize the state of Palestine. Unfortunately, not the country where I come from, even though we have a unanimous parliamentary motion since 2015 and has not been set into motion. 10 years now, 10 years, December 2015 until today. What has been the element that brought about this change? And we have seen it in the parliament. I mean, if you see how some colleagues from the extreme right or the EPP or even Renew were speaking about the Palestinian people in the struggle 2 years ago and how they speak now, you see that there is a change. The change has been due to the very strong response of the peoples of the countries of the EU that have been consistently for all these years on the street expressing their solidarity with the struggle of the Palestinian people. So in order to be more concise and to the point on what I was meant to ask you, given also your authority and the very deep work that you have done in all your reports on the situation on the ground. We are now after an, in my view, despicable accord in quotes, Trump-Netanyahu accord, that has been also incorporated and included by the member states of the EU, a vast majority as a good event, that has had all the negative and atrocious results that you have stated in your report and were relevant to the discussion that we're doing. Which is, for us, it's clear what it is. The new plan, the new Middle East plan that we have seen in the past is the continuation of the Abraham Accords that we have seen, all in detriment of the Palestinian people and its interests. So I would like to know, what are the dynamics now in the UN afterwards? What do you see as a dynamic in also the EU member states vis-à-vis the new situation? What do you think that there will be their positioning in the coming years? And I'm saying that taking into account that in the end, in order to curb the support of Israel by our own member states, and we have a lot of experience. You know, Greece was a non-permanent member of the Security Council, is still a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council, and has done nothing in order to promote what the Greek people has been saying, that we have been dozens upon dozens of thousands of people in the streets continuously, even today. That in the end of the day, we need to go against our own governments. Because this is, in my view, the territory that we need to continue giving the struggle, to push forward for a Palestinian state, independent, free, within the 1967 borders, with territorial integrity, for the end of occupation, for the end of the colonies, for the right of the refugees to return. I mean, working towards that in the mass movement, in the trade unions, there could be, in our view, there is the place where we can do a difference and we can push a lot of pressure that will also push forward all the positive things that we have seen the previous year, to particularly now that I feel that there will be a curb on how the EU member states we're seeing the situation, particularly because we have had this agreement with all these elements that you were stating. So thank you very much for the attention.
Thank you, Nicola. I have Rudy is going to just ask a short question as well, Ms. Albanese, and then I might just have one other question, and then we'll pass back to you to wrap up.
Yes, very short. Well, not actually a real question, but a comment. I found it very interesting what you said about people from countries, also mine, Belgium. I see a lot of people coming back who fought actually in the war, and they're even very proud of it. They communicate very openly, and it is in a contrast of what we have seen before. Everybody who was going to fight or even sometimes visit the Middle East during the last war there was immediately, oh, this is a potential terrorist because he was fighting in the Middle East, and now it's completely silence. I mean, the right wing, although they always talk about security and how to watch the borders so that no terrorists come inside, now they receive with open hands, even if they are proud of it. And I think, yeah, maybe you could give some advice how we could more stress this item, because I think it's an item that also would be very, let's say, would be very accepted also in the public in general. Thank you.
Okay, and just my question, I know you're familiar with the Irish Occupied Territories Bill, and just given our Greek colleague is talking about the mobilisation and alliances that have been built with civil society, with trade unions, with certain politicians all mobilising to see action. But I know from your report, just maybe to remind that if there is the absence of that EU consensus on taking action, whether it's suspension of the trade agreement, an arms embargo, or even just upholding the ICJ ruling of July 2024, how important is it that EU member states are in compliance with law, or that argument that if there's an absence of EU consensus, it doesn't let a member state off the hook, and just your opinion on the inclusion of services in that bill?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Look, on the first question, I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer the denunciation before of the EU association agreement beyond what I've said. I'm not an expert of EU law, but I don't think that this would be difficult to answer for some for experts themselves. Other than, again, it doesn't take long to suspend that agreement, as long as there is the political will, which is completely lacking. And the question is why? With the European surveys, people's survey, showing that between 60 and 70% of Europeans think that Israel is committing genocide and they want the end, or war crimes and crimes against humanity, and therefore they want the end of the European complicity and the suspension of the agreement. We see two things. On the one hand, the European leadership go ahead no matter what, but also we see a repression of dissent at the individual states level. And this is extremely serious. There is a repression of fundamental freedoms of European citizens in the name of protecting the interest of a state who's not even a member of the European Union. Although I agree with the comment that was made that yes, it's treated as Israel is treated as a de facto member of the European Union. A case in point is what I recently discovered by visiting Italy, where apparently the transfer of weapons produced in Italy and transiting through Italy has been allowed in violation of a national law that only allows the unchecked transfer toward European countries. And when the authorities have been asked why so, why there have not been checks on the transits toward Israel, the answer was, well, they're like us. They are one of us. What does it mean, one of us? Where is this alliance? And again, I jump to the last question. The European member states, yes, the European Union, I agree with Honorable Alavano's comment that European Union is different from Europe and from European states. However, this only goes to the point that European states cannot invoke European Union agreements in order not to comply with their international law obligations. And yes, there has never been such a hiatus between the will of the people and enacted policies at the European level. It's clear what is happening, but I also see that the people are not stopping. I mean, if Italy, my own country, is an example, in the past two months there have been strikes after strikes, and of course the leading the government and the leading political coalition has jumped on the opportunity of use the word ceasefire and peace in order to slam the protesters, the workers and others, saying, you see, you obtained what you wanted, now what do you want? People want the end of the slaughter. People want the end of the abuses, the end of the torment inflicted against the people in which they see themselves today. They see their vulnerability. Because clearly this is not a political establishment that is led by the ideal of protecting the people. No, it's mainly dominated by the idea of protecting given financial interests. It doesn't sound the right constellation to pave the way toward peace. So I have the same feeling and the same fear that the future will be much harsher than our recent past, and we will regret the time we have wasted trying to concoct solution, because the solution is much closer, and it's really to encourage the people to strike, encourage the people to boycott themselves, the Israeli or the businesses connected to the Israeli occupation, as it has been. I mean, it was the global solidarity movement which contributed substantively to the collapse of the apartheid in South Africa. So surely non-member states, I mean, it took a while to many member states, including European states, to cut ties with apartheid South Africa. It really took decades, and still it happened, and it will happen even with Israel. Although the situation is much more complicated now, because of the ideological underpinnings protecting and defending Israel from within Europe. And again, I don't think that it's about religious affiliation. I don't think that it has much to do with it at all. It has to do with an ideology which is racist toward any other. Then, I mean, the theory of the pure race, it's still hard to overcome. This is the reality. We are still there racist. And I've been saying that brutally. I know that it's brazen. I know that it's a strong statement, but I really want people to reflect upon this. We are still coping with the legacy of the last century's racism, and it's an undone legacy. The last point I wanted to make, on the soldiers, I fully agree. I mean, I was recently in Belgium, and during a conference, of course, the people who made the comment I'm about to report were the minority, but there was a group of people in a university conference, in a university debate, when I announced this concept that there are there are Israeli soldiers with European nationality coming back to Europe. Someone shouted in the room, "They are heroes." Yeah, this is the thing. I mean, we cannot shout at people who have this idea. We need to bring them to see the inhumanity in their statement and how serious it is. But we have to also remember that we are the continent which slaughtered 6 million Jews and Roma and Sintis. Yes, I mean, we have come to terms somewhat with our sense of guilt toward the Jews, but look at how Roma and Sinti are still treated in Europe. And I say, I fully understand the Jewish people and their attachment to Israel, because probably, hadn't they had Israel, they would be treated like the Roma and Sinti today. Still discriminated, because it was not that after the the Soviet Union liberated, broke into the concentration camp and started the dismantlement. The process that led to the dismantlement of the concentration camp is not, and we need to reappropriate our history, is not that the Jewish people were fully reintegrated. They had to be shipped somewhere outside of Europe. And Israel was the only place that was left for many of them. So intimately, I do understand the deep love and the existential fear that the Jewish people have in Europe, because it's built into their system. And I do think that this is a lesson for us and to understand, that the system is, that the world is changing, and probably this is the opportunity for us to shift. Last point concerning the Irish occupied bills. It's very sad that Ireland is still there discussing the occupation bills, because again, by the time the occupation bills will be passed, most probably it will be so outdated, in the sense that, look at the fact that you cannot just discriminate against the settlement goods. Occupation must mean everything that is connected to the occupation. So the fact that the Israeli economy is not separable from that of the occupation. So I truly hope that this will be built in, this awareness will be built into the bill, and that it will be approved soon. Of course, it should be done by other countries as well. And good luck with it.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Albanese, for your time and for your very frank and honest responses to everybody's questions. We covered a multitude of topics there today, but just also to say we really appreciate the work that you're doing, and we know that Palestinians is at the heart of all of us when we're doing our work on this delegation and when you're doing your work, and we never lose sight of that. But it is also important to thank you personally for the work and the sacrifices that you experience in doing your job. It is really valued by the members of this delegation. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to come and exchange with you.
Thank you.